Barry Bonds spent decades on the other side of this equation. He was the one who made pitchers lose sleep, managers lose confidence, and entire fan bases lose their minds with a single swing of the bat. He was the standard, the measuring stick against which offensive greatness in baseball was calculated for a generation of fans who watched him dismantle pitching staffs with a combination of physical gifts and competitive ferocity that the sport had never quite seen assembled in one human being. Barry Bonds does not shock easily. David Ortiz, Big Papi, defined clutch hitting for an entire era of Boston Red Sox baseball. The man who broke curses. The man who delivered when the season was on the line, when the crowd was standing, when every rational calculation said the moment was too big. He built his legacy on timely hits and walk-off moments. He knows what those moments look like from the inside, from the batter's box, from the specific psychological space where preparation meets pressure and produces something extraordinary. David Ortiz does not react with shock to a clutch hit. And yet, 2 consecutive multi-hit games from Shohei Ohtani. A timely hit in the 9th inning that kept the Dodgers alive when the game was threatening to slip away. A walk-off run that ended the night with Dodger Stadium in the kind of collective eruption that takes hours to fully come down from. And in the aftermath, in the press boxes and broadcast booths and living rooms where legends watch baseball and allow themselves to feel what they see, Barry Bonds and David Ortiz and others reacted with something they almost never show publicly. Genuine shock. This is the story of what Ohtani did. And what it means that the men who defined offensive greatness for their generations cannot watch it without losing their composure. The box score is the most honest document in sports. It doesn't care about narratives. It doesn't adjust for difficulty or context or the specific pressures that make one hit more meaningful than another. It simply records what happened, who pitched, who hit, who scored, who made the play that mattered. And when the box score shows multi-hit performances in back-to-back games, it is telling you something specific and important about the player responsible. It is telling you that the performance was not a coincidence. Single-game explosions happen in baseball. A hitter gets hot for one night, finds a groove against a specific pitcher's stuff, benefits from fortunate sequencing and favorable counts and balls that find gaps that might have been caught on a different evening. These things happen. They are part of the beautiful randomness that makes baseball endlessly compelling. But back-to-back multi-hit games are different. They require consistency of approach across different pitching staffs, different game situations, different emotional contexts. The pitcher changes. The defensive alignment changes. The count sequences change. The game situation changes. Everything external changes, and the hitter must adapt to all of it while maintaining the internal consistency of approach and decision-making that produces quality contact repeatedly. That is genuinely difficult. At the major league level, where every pitcher is executing a specifically designed plan to get each individual hitter out, back-to-back multi-hit performances represent something that deserves to be taken seriously as a measure of sustained excellence. For Shohei Ohtani, these consecutive games were not surprising to the people inside the Dodgers organization who watch him prepare every single day. They were the predictable outcome of an approach to hitting that prioritizes process over results, that focuses relentlessly on decision-making at the plate rather than on the scoreboard consequences of individual at-bats. But for the legends watching from outside? For Bonds and Big Papi and the others whose reactions have been circulating through the baseball world since the final out? It was something different entirely. The first multi-hit game established the pattern. Ohtani arrived at the ballpark having already completed his pre-game preparation, the film study, the physical work, the mental rehearsal of specific scenarios he expected to encounter during the game. This is not an exaggeration or a romantic embellishment of how elite athletes prepare. People inside the Dodgers organization describe a pre-game routine that is as structured and intentional as the game itself, a process that begins hours before the first pitch and covers every pitcher he is likely to face, every count situation he might encounter, every defensive alignment he might need to account for. By the time he stepped into the batter's box for his first at-bat, Ohtani was not encountering the opposing pitcher for the first time. He had already faced him, in his preparation, in the film, in the mental simulation that turns information into instinct. The first hit came on a pitch that the opposing pitcher believed was safe. A location and pitch type chosen specifically to exploit what the scouting report identified as a tendency in Ohtani's swing. What the scouting report could not account for was the adjustment Ohtani had already made, the recalibration of his approach that happened not in response to the pitch, but in anticipation of it. The ball found the outfield grass with the efficiency of a well-executed plan. The second hit that evening told a different story. Different count. Different situation. Different pitcher, brought in specifically to neutralize the left-handed power that Ohtani presents to right-handed pitching. Different pitch type, something designed to induce weak contact or a swing and miss rather than the kind of hard contact that changes scoreboards. Ohtani hit it hard anyway. Because the adjustment required was one he had already rehearsed. Because the information the new pitcher provided was processed and converted into decision in the fraction of a second that separates a swing from a check swing, a line drive from a pop-up, a hit from an out. 2 hits. 1 game. The foundation of something that the baseball world would be talking about for days. If the first game established the pattern, the second game elevated it into something that forced legends to react. The context matters enormously here. By the time the 9th inning arrived, the Dodgers were in the specific kind of difficult situation that reveals the true character of a lineup, the kind where the margin for error has disappeared, where every at-bat carries consequences that extend beyond the individual plate appearance, where the pitcher on the other side has been specifically selected for his ability to close out games against exactly this kind of opposition. Closers in modern baseball are specialists in one thing above all else: preventing the kind of timely hit that extends innings and changes outcomes. They throw their hardest stuff in the highest leverage situations. They attack hitters with the specific weapons most likely to produce quick outs in the fewest possible pitches. They are trained and prepared and psychologically calibrated for exactly the moment that the 9th inning of a close game represents. Ohtani came to the plate in that moment. And everything that makes him different from other great hitters, the preparation, the pitch recognition, the ability to slow the game down internally while it speeds up externally, expressed itself in a single at-bat that Dodger Stadium will not forget quickly. The timely hit in the 9th inning was not a product of chance or luck or the random bounce that baseball occasionally gifts to the team that needs it most. It was the product of a decision-making process that had been running continuously since before the game began. Ohtani had studied this pitcher. Had mapped his tendencies in high-leverage situations. Had identified the pitch most likely to arrive in the count that developed during the at-bat. When it arrived, he was ready. The hit kept the Dodgers alive. The stadium rose. And somewhere in the watching world, Barry Bonds and David Ortiz and others who had built their legacies on exactly this kind of moment leaned forward and started paying a very specific kind of attention. Walk-off moments in baseball exist in their own category of sports memory. They compress everything: the tension of the game, the hope of the crowd, the specific athletic execution required, into a single play that resolves instantaneously and completely. One moment the game is unresolved. The next moment it is over, and the home team is celebrating, and the crowd is releasing everything it has been holding for 9 innings or more. When Ohtani's walk-off run crossed the plate, the culmination of a sequence of events that began with his 9th inning hit and ended with the kind of aggressive, intelligent base running that reflects the same total preparation he brings to every aspect of his game, the reaction at Dodger Stadium was immediate and overwhelming. But the reaction that captured the baseball world's attention was not in Los Angeles. Barry Bonds. A man who hit 762 home runs. A man who was intentionally walked 688 times in his career because opposing teams decided that giving him a free base was preferable to allowing him to hit. A man who has seen every form of offensive brilliance that baseball has produced in the last 4 decades and who measures new performances against a personal standard that very few athletes in any sport could meet. Bonds reacted with shock. Not the polite, diplomatic acknowledgement that former players sometimes offer when discussing current stars. Genuine, visible, audible shock, the kind that tells you the person reacting is not performing for an audience but is genuinely processing something they did not fully anticipate. His specific words, circulating now through baseball media and social platforms with the velocity that only truly meaningful reactions achieve, centered not just on the result but on the method. On the way Ohtani approaches at-bats. On the decision-making visible in real time if you know what to look for. On the particular quality of his ninth-inning hit, which Bonds identified as the product of preparation so thorough that the outcome felt predetermined even as it was happening. David Ortiz, Big Papi, reacted differently but with equal intensity. Where Bonds focused on the process, Ortiz focused on the feeling. On what it means to be the person in the batter's box in the ninth inning of a close game with the season's momentum hanging on a single at-bat. On the specific psychological demand of that moment. And on the rarity, the genuine, extraordinary rarity, of a player who meets that demand not occasionally, not when circumstances align perfectly, but consistently, repeatedly, game after game in a way that is beginning to define an era. Both men, from different angles and with different vocabulary, arrived at the same conclusion. What Ohtani is doing right now is different. There is a reason the reactions of legends carry more weight than the reactions of ordinary observers. It is not simply their fame or their historical accomplishments. It is the specific knowledge that comes from having been inside the competitive environment that Ohtani currently inhabits, from having stood in the batter's box against the best pitching in the world, having felt the pressure of the highest leverage moments in the sport, having understood from personal experience what it actually costs to produce the kind of performance that Ohtani is producing. When Bonds expresses shock, he is not reacting to the statistical line. He is reacting to what the statistical line represents, the daily choices, the preparation investment, the competitive discipline required to sustain this level of performance across consecutive games against major league pitching staffs that are specifically designed to prevent it. When Big Papi reacts with intensity to the ninth inning hit, he is not simply celebrating a good play. He is recognizing in Ohtani the specific quality that defined his own career, the ability to want the biggest moment, to prepare for it, and to deliver in it when everything is on the line. These are men who built legendary careers on exactly those qualities. And they are watching someone demonstrate those qualities at a level that makes even them recalibrate their understanding of what the sport's ceiling looks like. That is not a small thing. That is the baseball world's highest form of recognition, offered not through awards or contracts or media coverage, but through the unguarded reactions of the people who know best what they are watching. The most important word in the conversation about Ohtani's back-to-back multi-hit performances is not spectacular, or historic, or any of the superlatives that naturally attach themselves to elite athletic achievement. The most important word is consecutive. Individual greatness is common enough in baseball that it fails to move the needle on its own. Every season produces nights where a player is simply better than the opposition, where the pitches arrive in locations that suit his swing, where the defensive positioning leaves gaps that his contact exploits, where everything aligns to produce a statistical line that impresses without necessarily revealing anything lasting. Consecutive performance is different. It demands that the player reproduce the conditions of excellence across a changed environment, different pitchers, different game situations, different pressures, different variables that require adaptation rather than repetition. And adaptation, at the major league level, requires the kind of preparation that cannot be faked or shortcut. Ohtani's consecutive multi-hit games are compelling not because they happened. They are compelling because of how they happened, with the same deliberate, prepared, process-driven approach in Game 2 that produced Game 1's results. With adjustments visible to anyone watching closely enough. With the specific quality of contact and decision-making that tells you the performance was constructed, not gifted. Bonds sees that. Ortiz sees it. The others who reacted with shock see it. And what they see, looking at Ohtani through the lens of their own experience with sustained offensive excellence, is a player in the process of building something that consecutive games are only the beginning of. The baseball season is long enough that any single week can be contextualized away. Hot streaks happen. Pitchers go through periods where their stuff is off. Schedules align favorably. Sample sizes remain small enough that the skeptic always has a foothold. But the reactions of Bonds and Big Papi and the others who responded to Ohtani's back-to-back performances suggest something that transcends the usual early-season caution about drawing conclusions too quickly. They are not reacting to a hot week. They are reacting to a player who is demonstrating, in consecutive games against Major League pitching, the specific combination of preparation and execution that produces sustained offensive excellence, the kind that holds up not over a week or a month but over a full season of 162 games against every pitcher, in every situation, under every variety of pressure the sport can generate. The ninth-inning hit. The walk-off run. The multi-hit performance in the game before. None of these things happened by accident. All of them happened because Shohei Ohtani has built a preparation infrastructure so thorough and so consistent that excellence is not his ceiling, it is his floor. That is what the legends saw. That is what shocked them. Not the results themselves, but the clarity with which the results revealed the process behind them. Barry Bonds built his career on a process that nobody in his generation could match. David Ortiz built his legacy on a competitive heart that arrived biggest when the moment demanded the most. They recognize what they are watching in Ohtani. They recognize the specific DNA of sustained greatness, because they lived it themselves, and they know how rare it is, and they know what it looks like when someone is not just having a good week but operating at a level that will define the entire season around him. Their shock was real. Their reactions were honest. And the baseball world would do well to pay the same kind of attention they are paying. Because Shohei Ohtani is not finished. He is just getting started.